Hi everyone, it's Wilhelm here and welcome to today's webinar on true effectiveness and leadership. Could you just push number 7 in the chat box if you hear me okay, so we make sure we have the connection working here? Please just give me a number in the chat box so we can see that there is a connection working here. Great. Thank you guys, that's very, you notice this webinar will be hosted in English. We have some participants from outside of Sweden, extra welcome to you, who are not Swedish speaking. So it won't be a problem. The English will be fairly simple and easy. And might be a person to join in right now. So again, welcome everybody. Let's start this webinar. It's going to address the topics of what it is to be effective, and also we'll speak about leadership today. And to make the most of this webinar, I want to make sure that you feel welcome, that you are sitting comfortably, that you have some mental space to listen and participate. So please give this webinar your full attention, as if you and I were in the same room together, having a chat about some interesting topics. That's the flavor I'd like here, even though it's mostly a presentation style, this webinar. So please don't work with emails. Don't get people take your attention. Make sure this screen is at the top of your computer. And let's start off with a question that's always good to start with. You see on your screen now a little poll, and the question is simply, how present are you right now to this webinar starting, to where you're at, and to my voice? Just click there and respond to the question, how present are you right now? Since people are a bit distracted actually, or you haven't found the box yet. And okay, some people getting here, very, very good. Some distracted, some very present, that's good too. Often this question, just asking it to oneself or in a meeting or anywhere, actually makes people a bit more present. Because most people are in the getting here group, and that's cool. Let's move on and get here more and more. This is a quote I like a lot. Almost anything will work if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. You know, you restart your phone, you pull out the cord on your computer, you unplug things for a few minutes, and then they suddenly get their focus, energy, and intention back. So this is unplugging time, everybody. Give yourself the next 40 minutes to simply relax, listen, participate, and we'll cover some very interesting topics. I love presenting this seminar to you. It's probably the best webinar I've been creating so far, and I love the topics we're going to address. I love the possibility that arises for people when we get some insight into human functioning and the nature of leadership. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we function as human beings, and what's the nature of leadership? And then I got an invitation for you at the end of this webinar too. Should there be any questions, concerns, something not working, use the chat box. My colleague Martin is on there and he can respond to any questions that we have. Okay, so who is this webinar for? Well, the people that I normally work with normally fall into one or more of 3 categories, and here they are. It's mostly people who are already productive or highly productive people, and they simply want to be even more productive in life, at work and in life outside work. So people who are already doing well, but want to know more, learn more, and get more accomplished. That's the first group. Second group is, again, productive people who for sure are doing well enough, but they experience being time poor. They slip into, from time to time and more than they want, a sense of overwhelm, stress, or worry. It's like they're at home with their family in the evenings and they are thinking about their job. And they get present, but then again, they're sitting with their family at dinner thinking about their work, and they slip into this concern, worry, distracting thoughts at times when they don't want to think about work. Then they're doing fine and they slip back into being stressed again. So that's another category, very, very common. People want to gain a deeper sense of well-being in and outside of work. And the last group are people who feel stuck and don't see a way out. Still doing pretty well, but sometimes, should I stay in this job? Should I change job? They feel stuck in balancing time between work and family, or they don't get that puzzle kind of together the way they want. They might have a promotion coming up and they're not sure if they want to take the new job as a manager or not. So they are kind of indecisive and would love to see life with more clarity. So that's a good way to put it. They'd like to see life with more clarity than they do. So quickly, who is this webinar not for? Well, simply, if you're not willing to look, learn, and discover things about yourself, this is not going to be of much value for you, because we're going to look, we're going to learn, and you'll discover some things about being human and about yourself. And also, if you're too distracted right now and you're still not paying attention to the seminar, like you're being disturbed by people around you all the time, you feel the need to process emails right now, or you can't focus, then better leave now. Do what you need to do with focus and come back at another webinar where you can actually listen. Great. So thanks for staying on, everybody here. Shortly, my name is Wilhelm. My surname is Hast. I've been working in the field of personal leadership and personal effectiveness for more than 25 years. I spend my days and week mostly training and coaching leaders to be more productive while they have a deeper sense of well-being and clarity in life. The leaders work at different levels. They are entrepreneurs, they are professional people, there are executives holding executive positions in companies, or also people who are not leading other people. They are like, as a manager, that is, they are project managers. They have interim accountabilities where they need to get effective and get things done. So basically, it's a mix of executives, professionals, entrepreneurs, and general leaders. And I work with a lot of people over these years. It's way over 20,000 participants. And what's great with my job is I get to work with principles that are at the heart of being human. So I worked with people from a lot of countries, and I worked in quite a few countries. And what I'll teach you here today, I could teach in any country to any culture, because what we're going to look at today goes beyond culture differences. It goes beyond being a man or a woman. It goes beyond being a manager in an organization or being an entrepreneur leading your own company. It basically has to do with what does it mean to be human? How do we function? What is leadership and effective stress-free productivity? And what is your interest around all that? Okay, let's get into it here. I love distinctions. I love the clarity that gets distinctly clear when you separate notions that aren't often separated and clear. And one such notion is the difference between different kinds of learning. On one side, we can learn things in theory, like theoretically, and we can gain a really good theoretical understanding about something. That doesn't necessarily mean there's an impact in the quality of our life and our leadership. Then on the other hand, we have insight. Insights are an experiential event where our perception shifts and we see something we didn't see before, or we see something with more clarity than we ever saw it before. Insight naturally shifts how the world looks to us, and out of that shift in experience or shift in perception, new behaviors come naturally. New styles of communication arise naturally. New possibilities becomes accessible to us that weren't available before we had the insight. So I'm going to do a little experiment with you, everybody here now. So time to get extra present and focused, because I'm going to show you a picture and ask you a question. In this picture, there is something I'd want you to look for. And if you see it, you click yes on the poll, it comes up. And if you don't see it, just you click no. So I'm going to ask you this kind of picture. I'm not going to ask you this kind of picture, sorry. I'm going to ask you the question, where is the arrow in this picture? And if you see it, you click yes. If you don't see it, you click no. And if you might see it, but then you're not sure. Okay. Some of you see it, some of you might be uncertain. Here's the next picture. Where is the arrow in this picture? If you saw it before, you see it now too. Here's another picture. The arrow is clearly visible if you've seen it. And if you haven't, then you don't see it. Now, there might be a moment for those of you who don't see it, like an aha moment, where it pops out. Here's one more. If you lack insight into the nature of where the arrow is, you won't see it. But if you've seen it, you continue to see it in each and every picture. Here is a black arrow, right? And right underneath this is a white arrow. So now everybody has seen the arrow that's looking at the webinar. You might have seen this before, it might be a first for you, but how this works is that without the insight of the nature of this arrow, you might see FedEx cars on the streets and you don't see that white arrow pointing to the right. You can have seen hundreds of those cars, but the arrow never shows up. After this webinar, if you hadn't seen this before, you will start seeing that arrow and you can't help but see it. That's the nature of an insight. This is like a metaphor, a simple little experiment we're doing, right? So now you have insight into the nature of that arrow. And I promise you, when you see FedEx cars where you live, you will naturally just see that white arrow in the middle of the logo, and you can't help yourself but seeing it. That's the nature of insight. You see into the design of something such that it sticks with you, it alters your perception, and you can't help but see it later on. Now, we're not going to talk more about FedEx logos here in this webinar. We're going to speak about insights into interesting topics like what is effectiveness? What is leadership? How can I be more of my best self more of the time? How can I do what I do and accomplish what I accomplish with a stress-free experience of life? And I can speak theories till midnight without much happening, or we can interact together here, you and I, me speaking, you listening, with the possibility of one or two or three insights clicking in for you, so you naturally get a new view of effectiveness, a new view of leadership, and a new access to being more of your best self more of the time. So here's a question I've been asking people for years. What is effectiveness? And here comes a poll again. Please look at it and click what answer you think is the best fit for what effectiveness is. None of these might be perfect to you, and that's okay. We're not going to argue which definition here is right. I just want to make you think a little. Effectiveness, what is that? Is it doing more in less time? Is it doing more in less time with fewer resources? Or is it the result between balance between capacity and results? Or is it doing the right things in the right order with the right resources? Just reflect a little. See what fits for you. What does it mean to be effective? Is it getting more things done in less time? Or is it simply getting more done in less time, but also using fewer resources? Is it the result of something we could call capacity and results? Or is it simply getting right things done, but also in the right order with the right kind of resources? It's interesting 80-20 distribution here in your answers, guys on the call. Nobody said more in less time, and I'm happy about that. Nobody said more in less time with fewer resources, and I'm happy about that too. Nothing wrong with the last answer. It's a really good one, actually. But I love the definition that says that that effectiveness is a result of balancing two things. So you might agree or disagree to what I'm about to explain here. Put that aside. If you don't agree, that's completely okay. But don't get stuck in evaluating too much. Just listen to the whole explanation and see if that's a good fit for you. I say that effectiveness is a result of balance between results and, in this case, an individual's capacity for results. If you have this much capacity, you cannot have more results than this. A car that has a maximum capacity for 200 kilometers per hour of speed will not go beyond 200 kilometers per hour in speed without altering the design of the car. Of course, if it's downhill, it might go quicker. If it's a really strong tailwind, it might go quicker. But then that's an addition to the natural capacity of the car. So the car might do 1 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4.7 seconds. That's the maximum capacity of the car. It will not go more than 4.7. It won't go quicker than 4.7 up to 100 if you don't alter the capacity. Change the fuel, change the aerodynamics, change the weight of the car. You need to alter what impacts the capacity to get better results. This is human nature too, not only cars or other machinery. And interestingly enough, there are things you could alter to shift the human being's capacity. I've asked people for years too, what impacts our capacity to be effective? And you can look where you sit right now. What has an impact on your capacity to get results? What are the things that has an impact? And here are some of them, right? Food, obviously. If we don't sleep well, we get lower capacity. Our work environment, a lot of energy and intention goes into that in workplaces, making sure the work environment is good. The tools we use. If your email program doesn't work well, it's going to impact the results of processing emails. If your IT systems aren't up to speed, you have lower results. Relationships have a huge impact on the results that are available. If there's conflict and frustration, irritation between colleagues in a workplace, their capacity goes down mostly. If there is trust, appreciation, the capacity for great results is bigger. And we could go on and on and on here for 10, 15 minutes and look at capacity increasing factors like the processes we use, what kind of software we use, the competence, knowledge, and skill level obviously has an impact, right? Now, what's interesting here is all these factors are fairly visible. You can see them. But hidden in this picture now, that you can't see because it's hidden, are other factors that I call the invisible factors of capacity for results. Why can't you see them? Well, it's because they are written in white letters. On this page, written in white letters, are invisible factors that have a way bigger impact on capacity. I'll show them to you soon by altering the color of the background. Now, when I teach, and specifically teach the program True Effectiveness, I love to take people on a journey and start discovering the invisible. or the slightly visible. And the more we make that visible over about 6 weeks, people's capacity go up dramatically and results go up. Here are some of those factors. I'll skip a few slides here. The first and most simple one is actually the degree of being present. When a human being gets present, we have a higher capacity to be productive. I'll read the other ones. And these are just examples, but understanding the human mind. We'll speak about that a little bit in this webinar too. Understanding feelings, where do they come from and how do they alter and change? Accessing the innate well-being, that kind of well-being that is deep inside regardless of circumstance. Making truthful choices. Choosing what's true for you increases your capacity versus choosing what other people want you to do. The clearer you are on your intentions, the more capacity. The more you trust yourself in an authentic way, that is, your capacity goes up. There are more ways of getting feedback than from people. There are 3 ways of getting feedback. The more you understand those, your capacity starts increasing. Your relationship to yourself, and there is more and more and more slightly invisible dynamics of being human that have a huge impact of our capacity for results. So if you want to become more effective, what you do basically is you increase your capacity by seeing things you don't yet see. And when you do, your capacity starts to rise because you get more present, you understand how your mind works, you don't get stuck in your feelings of being stressed for so long, you start to access your natural well-being more, you make better choices, and you start to see more clearly where you're going. There's a new level of trust in yourself and in the principles behind life. Feedback is something you're going to start noticing everywhere because it's visible way more than we notice, and you'll start to ask for it more. Your relationship to yourself starts to improve and you get nurtured by the insights you have, and here you get into a really beneficial upward spiral. And as some capacity keeps increasing, obviously your results starts to not only improve a little, but transformational results starts to occur. So this is how I see effectiveness. Optimal balance between the capacity of results and results means there is effectiveness present. And if we want more results, we need to stop hunting, aiming, stressing and pressing so much for results and look in another direction. And the other direction has to do with, hang on a minute, what increases our capacity here to be productive? What increases our capacity to have results? And the first simplest question, which you can take from this webinar back to work, is simply, hang on, are we present here? Am I present right now? And if so, are the people around me present? If you go to any meeting in a company, there is a big likelihood that people around the table or standing around, whatever you stand around, the board or something in that meeting, aren't present to the current meeting and to the current intention. And if you want a quick win for increasing people's capacity, just make sure they are more present. And you'll start to notice conversations flow better, there's more creative ideas, and more things get done, and results increase. So this was a little bit about effectiveness. We'll move on and speak about a few other things. But before that, I'll share a few participants that's been working with me in the True Effectiveness program and with coaching, and I'll explain a little more towards the end of the webinar here how that works. But this is Maria. She said, thanks to Wilhelm's programs, I've gotten access to new tools and new perspectives. That's the insights I spoke about. This has given me a great inner calm. It increased sales over 50%, and at the same time, I stopped working overtime. In other words, I work less and get more done during my workday, and that's a fantastic feeling. I get home from work with renewed energy instead of the feeling I had before of never being enough. And this is Maria Bernander, who works as a director of business development at Perfect Translation. It's a very big international company who deals with advanced translation work. So Maria actually stopped working overtime and increased her sales results with 50%. And she was a high performer before. She got some insights into how her mind works and how she was not using her mind optimally, but wasting a lot of capacity that she recovered and expanded through the insights she got in working together. Okay, let's move on to the next section of this webinar. What's worth having insights about? If you want to become more effective and have deeper well-being, what should you study? Well, in my view, there are fewer things that have a quicker impact than studying the human mind. And I'm not going to speak so much about it today, actually. I have host webinars ongoingly, and are focused today more on leadership than the mind. But basically, you could say that it's very interesting to me how little human beings in the workplace study how the mind works, because it's our own mind that we're using all day long. When you reply to emails, you use your mind. When you sit in a meeting, you use your mind. When you're thinking about your day, you use your mind. When you look and inquire into what's inspiring and meaningful for you, you use your mind. The mind is at work constantly during the day, and there's very few people that I meet in the workplace who actually have fundamental knowledge about how the mind works. I'm going to do a few experiments with you here quickly. This is an odd question maybe, but hang on, in half a minute you'll understand what I mean. Do you understand basic principles of the human body? Of course you do. We learn it in school when we're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. We learn the basics of the body. I can ask any 12-year-old kid, how does oxygenization of the body works? How does the body pick up oxygen? And they'll tell you, oh, there are 3 parts to it. You have the lungs, it picks up oxygen from the air. The heart pumps the oxygen around the body, and there's these veins and arteries that run around the body that the blood goes out and in and back to the heart and gets more oxygen. So the inside of your body, any 12-year-old knows enough to explain the nature of the lungs and the hearts and the veins and arteries in the body, how they work, right? It's just common sense. Now, if I ask you, do you understand the basic principles of the human mind? 12-year-olds do not know about it. Very few human beings I meet know about it. And there are some very simple principles at play, which explains why you have the experience you have and why you feel the way you feel because of how the mind works. We're going to take a brief look at something here, and you need to play along with me here, because I'm doing a little experiment again. Not with that poll thing to click. Now I want you to look and quickly respond to a few questions. Here comes a few questions. A quick exercise, so be ready and we'll deal with this quickly. I ask you 3 questions and you just look at what comes up in your mind and respond quickly. Preferably out loud if you're sitting, so you can speak loud without looking too odd to people. And if not, you just respond to yourself. So just notice what comes to mind and say it. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? And here you respond with a yes. And if you didn't yet, that's the first question. So when I ask the first questions, just respond with a yes, and then I'll quickly move on to the next 2. Okay, now we're into it. Here comes the first question. Are you ready? Yes. What color is snow? Well, that's white. What does a cow drink? Milk. Or maybe you didn't say milk. Really? Cows don't drink milk. Cows drink water. And here, maybe your brain got a little too quick for your own good and said milk, because I kind of sped up and you made this association between white and snow and cows and milk and whatnot. This was to illustrate the quick principle. I'll do this quickly. The human mind is to some extent a stimulus and response machine. You get stimulus or input. That were the questions I gave you. Ready? The color of snow is white. What does cow drink? That's all input. It's called stimulus in behavioral language, right? And when we move along life, we get stimulus and then we quickly have a response to it. The human mind works like that a lot of the time. You get a bling on your screen and you look into your emails. You speak to somebody and they get a bling on their phone and suddenly they start texting in the middle of a call with you. You went online to look for something and suddenly you've been on Facebook for 15 minutes. It was a stimulus response reaction. You forgot where you were looking for and some other stimulus grabbed you and your response was 15 minutes on Facebook. So stimulus and response, stimulus and response, stimulus and response, stimulus and response goes on all the time for human beings. You might be at your job, somebody asks you, can I help me with this? Of course you say. And then later you realize, oh my God, why did I offer to help here? I should have said no. Or you're on your way to leave the office on time to get home for dinner with your kids. And then suddenly something happened and you notice you're 20 minutes late suddenly. It's like, what happened? Well, what happens was you had a thoughtless response to some stimuli and you lost your presence. Now, luckily, this is not the actual natural law or first principle for human beings. Human beings function differently. And some of you noticed that when we played a little game with the questions. Some of you caught yourself and found the space that's always present between stimulus and response if we look. How human beings function really is that we can access the space between stimulus and response. Some of you might have had the thought milk in your head, but you caught yourself and said water instead. Some of you might have slowed down so much you didn't even think milk, you thought water straight away. The point here isn't this silly little exercise. The point is for you to look for this, just like you looked for the FedEx arrow in the beginning of the webinar. Can you notice that between your response to what is happening and what happened in the first place, actually a space there? Can you help me with this? Doesn't necessarily need, you must say yes directly. You could find a space there and say, hey, let me think about it and get back to you after lunch. The more we slow down, the more we start to notice that our mind reacts less and actually start finding a space and make better choices in life. Between what happens and your response, there is this possibility of seeing more and more and more responses to any given situation in life. And this is super quick brief of how the mind works. The mind works reactively, and we get impulsive and too reactive to some extent, but there is this other possibility of not being so reactive. And if we find the space, the mind naturally starts providing more and more choices, more and more options, more and more possibility. It is a very creative function of being human. So that's the first little glimpse. You can bring that also after this webinar back to your work. You slow down and get a bit more present. That increases your capacity. And then instead of responding too quickly, just wait 1 second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds, and you will see that you naturally start to make different choices, which also increase your capacity and opens up the possibility for new results. I showed this picture to a purchasing manager in a very large company and said, I think this is funny, because her mind had no pause whatsoever. She was responding to stimuli all day long. And she laughed and said, oh, the person who drew that picture know exactly what goes on in my head. If I pull one string, there is 14 other strings being pulled at the same time. There is no need to live like this. Stress is not a necessary prerequisite for being productive. Stress is actually not necessary in the workplace at all. Human beings produce better results when we are not stressed. We have better communication with other people when we are not stressed. We think more clearly when we are not stressed. We make better decisions when we're not stressed. But when we have more to do when we see to do, we naturally have this impulse to increase the speed and work quicker and hope to produce the results so we can move on. But that's looking in the wrong direction in my book. If we turn to the capacity for results instead, learn to see when the mind gets overactive and overreactive, very soon we can access deeper levels of well-being and productivity. Here's another person that worked with me last year in coaching and in the True Effectiveness program. It's Helena. She's a head of logistics at a company called Santa Maria in Sweden. She says, I feel a lot more accepting and content with myself. My stress level had decreased. And although I feel I've dropped the pace, I get more things done anyway. That's a perfect example of looking for capacity more than striving for results. Next question today, and we'll cover this fairly briefly in a few minutes, and then I have an invitation to extend to you at the end of this webinar. And what is leadership? I've been speaking to countless leaders through the years and asking people, what is leadership and how do you define it? Very few people have a definition of leadership, although they exercise leadership every day, that they consider, reflected on, and choose, that they like and that guide them. Most people mumble something about being a role model or get people to work along you or something. I'm going to offer you a definition here. It's not the right one. It's not the only one. There are many good definitions, but it's one I like, and I'll speak about it a little bit, and I invite you to look at a couple of things. And that's also things you can bring back from your webinar into life and reflect further on. I like this definition a lot. I played around with it for years. It says leadership is taking a stand for a future that otherwise wouldn't have happened, such that others join in to make that future a reality. I'll read it a couple of times and just relax. Remember, we're unplugging here for another 10 minutes or so. Leadership is taking a stand for a future, such that others join in to make that future a reality. That's the essence of this. So what leaders do and what you do when you lead yourself. You can think leading yourself now for the next 5 minutes here. You might not have staff to lead, you might not be in a job where you lead others, but for sure you are leading yourself every day, whether you think of it or not. You're the leader in your own life. So leadership is taking a stand for a future. It's moving towards something of your choice. It's moving towards something that you've taken a stand for, that you made an active choice about, you could say, or that you have made a commitment to. You're giving your heart to it. You're giving your conscious attention to it. That taking a stand means looking deeply and choosing, committing, and bringing forth an intention beyond the stimulus and response reactive behavior. And it's obviously a future that's not automatically going to happen whether you stand for it or not, because then there's no leadership needed. There's a lot of things in life, there's no leadership needed for a lot of things in life, because they will just happen anyway, right? And futures that need leadership is a future a bit bigger or different than the inevitable future that's just treading along in life. And leaders take stands for futures so others join in somehow and take on fulfilling those futures. And if you look at leading yourself, you start to notice there are people along the way there that are not maybe consciously joining in and fulfilling the future you stand for, but they are part of your daily life. They work along with you. You might live with some of them. People are included in whatever futures or intentions we want to fulfill. And the more effectively we can include people, the quicker the results happen and the better quality the results happen. So what future are you a stand for in your life? I love asking people. We do this when we coach and work with people in the True Effectiveness program too. It's like, what 2-3 results would you love to have happen before Christmas now that would make this fall a great fall for you? What in the next 2-3 months would you love to see happen that would leave you by Christmas with the experience of, wow, this was a really great fall for me. Oh, I did this at work and I accomplished this other thing at work. I learned this new thing, and wow, with my family and free time, this one thing got created. Very few people, I ask, have a compass laid out that they can respond to the questions, what 3 things would you like to accomplish by Christmas that would make the fall a great fall for you? And if you don't know that, you cannot lead, because leadership is taking a stand for a future that wasn't automatically happening. And the bigger the leadership, the bigger the future, and the more people join in. So you can look right now, even for the rest of this week, today and tomorrow, what would you like to accomplish by end of day tomorrow? That is a little beyond what you would have done if you had been in this webinar. What kind of dinner would you like to have with your family tomorrow if you have a family? You could take something on Friday evening that was beyond the ordinary dinner, make it a great Friday evening, and that's an expression of leadership. It doesn't need to be bigger than that. You create a lovely dinner with something a little special tomorrow night with the people you live with, if you live with people, and others join in, and you had a different Friday evening than you would have had otherwise. That's an expression of leadership to me. There's lots of opportunities to lead yourself and others, and to have big shifts in leadership. All it takes is a few simple insights, and new futures start to arise. Here is Johan, a CEO of a company called Istringhausen, who said, "True effectiveness has given me insights and tools to manage my business in a more stress-free and structured way. It has given a way to focus on what's most important." That's the future we speak about here. And doing that in the moment without stressing yourself with all the things that don't get done. Because there's always things we don't get done. So Johan raised his level of leadership as CEO of a company by understanding what leadership was and by learning what increases capacity in terms of effectiveness. Okay, we're moving towards the end here, guys. I don't know what time you heard this webinar would be. I'll be done in about 5 more minutes. And lastly, somewhere in here is a mind. And there is a lot of reward in figuring out what is the mind, how does it work, what is impersonal about it, and what's actually personal about it. And the more you get clarity of how your mind works, the bigger your capacity for effectiveness and leadership. Here's the last quote before I have this invitation for you. Sarah, who is a research engineer at the university here in Gothenburg in Sweden, says that life is divided before true effectiveness and after true effectiveness. Before she participated in the True Effectiveness program, she says, "I thought that being stressed, impatient, and having a lack of energy at the end of the day were part of my job. Now I'm sure that they are not." The True Effectiveness program gave me not only the tools, but also the deep knowledge or insight to understand how to deal with them, how to deal with myself, and how to deal with other human beings. The learnings I got from True Effectiveness will stay with me for the rest of my life, and I know I will keep using them not only at work, but also in life. So discovering how your mind works and getting insights into the nature of being human is like finding balance on a bike. When we find balance on a bike, it sticks with us for life. When you've seen the arrow in the FedEx logo, that sticks with you for life. And some insights you get in the True Effectiveness program and coaching also sticks with you for life, like they did for Sarah. What does make a difference? Well, in my world, making a choice makes a difference. Making a decision makes a difference. And often what makes a difference is to have a conversation with another human being. When I work with people as a coach or in the True Effectiveness program, I never do that without first having a conversation with people. And I'll soon extend an invitation for you to have a conversation with me. The conversation is very, very simple. It's a conversation that is a coaching conversation. And in that conversation, I'll ask you a few questions. So if you thought this was interesting, what you heard today, I'd love to speak to you. It's an open conversation with no obligation whatsoever. I'll not try and sell you something on that conversation. That's not how we work. What I will do, though, is I'll ask you a few questions of what interested you. I'll ask you a bit of what your current situation is like. And then most importantly, I'd ask you a bit on what you want to learn and develop or what results you'd like to accomplish. And as we talk, from my background and experience, I will hear some things that I will provide you, which will give you more clarity and possibly a few insights. And we will map out a few steps for you that would be a possible step forward. And if I see that I could help you move forward and accomplish results at a different level or deepen your leadership, I'm happy to explain a bit more of what I do, how we work, and the results you can expect. And then you can ask me any questions you like about that. And then at the end of such a conversation, some people want to work and go forward with some work together, and some people don't want to, and that's perfectly okay either way. So you can just decline, there's no hard feelings either way. I simply love having conversations with people, see what I can contribute, and evoke insight into effectiveness and leadership. And there are two ways to learn and grow in life. The hard way is doing it by yourself. It's like getting a lock open that's stuck. You can try and try and try and try and try, and along the way you figure things out. I've done a fair bit of this in my life. It's at least 25 years ago since I started learning and teaching about what I now teach. But mostly I've done it this way instead. I found people that have more knowledge than I do, that have some kind of proven system. So I've seen that they can repeat their teaching with people over time and people have the same results. And also it helps to have a community of like-minded learners along with yourself. And that's why we have a program with people who do part of the study together and part individual. Because when you're taught by somebody who have expertise, they have built a system that really works, and you're in a journey with other people, it's so much easier to produce these breakthroughs. Now, what can you expect if you would want to work with me? Well, normally we start a process that is between 6 and 12 weeks. It's a bit individual, and I have different ways I work with people. But what you can expect that within a week already, you start to notice things about yourself you didn't see before. Within 2 weeks, you start to notice that you are less stressed and have more freedom and ease in life. And if you weren't stressed before, what you'll notice also is that you'll start having clarity and insights and aha moments in areas that are important for you. And by the third week or maybe fourth week, you will start seeing tangible, measurable results in your life in areas that are of importance for you that you're happy to get. And I'll explain more when we talk, if you want to talk, about how I can know that this will happen within the first week and the second weeks and in the 3 to 4 weeks. Well, that's the process and system that I built, and I've done it with more people than I can count. And I'm happy to talk to you about it and share what I do and how I'll do it. And the easiest way here to do this is for you simply to click on the screen here and book a time with me. And that's the next step, actually. And don't hesitate. If you think, should I, shouldn't I? Just click book a call. You'll come to a calendar. What you do there is you pick a time of your choice and you give your name and phone number, and I'll call you at that time. And the call will be half an hour or maybe up to 40 minutes. And as I said, no obligation whatsoever. It'll be an interesting conversation, and I promise you it'll be one of the more valuable conversations probably that you'll have this fall. So I want to thank you very, very much for your interest in what I do. And I should say what we do, because we're a team of people here actually, that do the work of true effectiveness and developing people's leadership together. I have awesome colleagues, and they're also part of how we work with people, that we have experts that are niched in different areas of leadership and productivity. So there is a great team here available for people who want to work with us. So thank you so much for your interest. I just invite you one last time to book a call. I look forward to speak to you, and take that next step now, should that be what you want to do. And I just want to thank you so much for your interest in participation. You can read more about what I do at trueeffectiveness.com. At www.trueeffectiveness.com, there is more information and videos to watch and a blog to read, etc., etc. And I hope to speak to you on the phone pretty soon. So thank you for your time. I wish you a great rest of your day. And with that, I say goodbye for today. Bye-bye.